Another question we commonly get, especially from retirees, is, should I pay off my mortgage? So I can handle that one, and I'll let Eric chime in a bit afterwards. Really, that comes down to personal choice. So our job, again, as advisors, is to say, well, you can go down this path, and that means this. Go down this path, and that means this. And then you can decide what's best for you and your family. And that applies to a number of different situations that we deal with. Specifically on the mortgage, really comes down to, we run into two scenarios pretty often. One is, I've got this pile of cash already in the bank, and it's built up over time, or I've done some saving. Should I use that to pay off the mortgage? That's, again, really a personal choice. You're not foregoing anything other than potentially investing those dollars for the future, but you're not incurring any tax. You're not running into any scenarios like that. So, it's up to you. Do you want to get rid of the debt or not? Again, depending on your interest rate and things like that. Interest rates traditionally, it's been, I know somebody's on the call that's in the mortgage business, so he knows all about rates, but interest rates have traditionally been low, so that's a good use of debt. As Eric said earlier, debt is just a tool. If you can use it effectively and at a low rate, it might be prudent to keep that and not pay it off, despite the fact that you might have the burden of the debt over you. So in a scenario where you have cash on hand, again, you're not really out anything. It's just an idea of, do I want to use it here or use it here? Another scenario that we run into quite a bit is, should I take money out of my portfolio to pay off the mortgage? Again, with the idea of just kind of getting it off my back. Again, we really can't put a price on the peace of mind that it would give you to be out from underneath that debt. Sometimes you've been paying on that thing for 15, 20, 25 years, and I'm retired and I just want to get rid of it. And that's a perfectly fine way to look at it. The alternative to that is, what are you taking it out of? So there's a market aspect of that. Again, we don't make business of predicting returns, but over time, a well-diversified portfolio should do about, call it 7% per year, over the long term. I'm not talking, 3 months. I'm talking over a 10-year period. So you're taking something out of something that should earn 7 over the long term, and you're putting it into a house, which, depending on where you live, and this can vary, typically doesn't go up quite by that much. So look, just historically, home prices have risen by either inflation or CPI, population index, things like that. So you're maybe looking at 2 or 3%. So again, on the surface, taking dollars from something that should earn 7 and putting it into something that earning 2 or 3, mathematically that doesn't seem like a great decision. But again, for you, it might be perfectly fine. The real kicker is, are you going to pay tax on those dollars to get that out? And that's really the one, again, still obviously always up to the client, and we advise both scenarios. But we've seen a lot of instances where the client might only have an IRA, where you, as Eric talked about with that traditional and Roth concept, if you take dollars out of the IRA, you're going to pay tax on them. So if you've got somebody with $1 million, just make it up, and they've got a $300,000 mortgage left over that they're really dead set on getting rid of, it might cost them $400,000 or $450,000 if you include the taxes to get that covered. So again, that would be a burden off their shoulders to have that debt gone, but they've also effectively cut their portfolio in half as far as what they need to live on for the remainder of their lifetime. So it does vary by situation. We've seen clients go both ways. So they say, I don't really care about the math part, I need to get this rid of, or they say, I don't really want to have this debt, but the rate's so good, and I see your point on leaving it grow in the market. So we've seen that go both ways.
Yeah, and just reiterate a couple things Pat said. One is this idea that it's back to debt as a tool. Most people can't just go out and write a check for a brand new house or a used house, whatever it may be. But a house is a pretty big purchase, and not everyone has just that much cash laying around. That's just why mortgages exist. It gives you a chance to spread the cost of that out over 30 years. It's the most common way to do it. And I think the piece of advice there would be, make sure you are taking on debt that is reasonable in relation to your income and your needs. Once again, I think a lot of times we find situations where maybe the guy at the bank wants to really get you into that loan because they're getting paid to make loans, and it's fine. But are people being pushed into taking on debt that like, oh, you can probably handle these payments, and maybe it's just too much house. Maybe it's twice as much house as they need. So a really good piece of advice, if you want to have an excellent experience in saving for retirement, is don't take on too much of a house. So that's just one caveat there. But if you take a look, and this is going back to Pat's point about what if I borrow money, and what happens in terms of the cost of the debt versus what it buys. It's interesting how things have changed over time. Right now, I would view it this way. if I have extra dollar around, I can choose to invest that dollar into an asset that's going to appreciate it, 2 or 3%. That's housing. And again, LA, New York, Miami, you're going to see different experiences with that. But across most of the country, a house investment is probably an investment that, an asset probably grows at 2 or 3% a year. And that's before you factor in the costs of upkeep and maintenance. And I've seen different studies that basically said that house as an investment is break even maybe after you factor in everything, property taxes and maintenance. But so just say it's a 2 or 3% asset. Or you put it in a diversified portfolio, and historically speaking, you should do 7% over the long haul. So on a 30-year look, 30-year investment into a house, 30-year investment into a diversified portfolio, I'm feeling pretty good about making 7 on the portfolio versus making 2 or 3 on the house. And so when I look at it that way, I would say I'd rather be investing dollars into the market rather than into the house. When you make your mortgage payment, you are making small little deposits towards the equity in the home. So from that standpoint, it is an investment. Historically, though, those returns on housing, those returns on the stock market have been really consistent. But if you go back to the 1980s and look at what mortgages were going for back then, you could talk about 30-year mortgages that were at 8, 9, 10%. So imagine if you would come from that scenario saying, I got to borrow money at 10% to invest into a house that's going to grow at 2 or 3%, where even invest in the stock market only get 7%. In that scenario, and you would think, gosh, I wouldn't want to take on any debt at all. I mean, I'm going to borrow like crazy just to buy this thing that's not even growing that much. So I can see that the aversion to debt back in the 1980s would have been pretty smart. Today, we have this topsy-turvy world where interest rates continue to stay at unbelievably low historic levels, like stuff that I never thought I would see in my investing career. It does make taking on debt a little more attractive than it would have been, say, in the 1980s. Still don't want to buy too much house, but it does make that tool a lot more powerful because it allows you to borrow, use the bank's money and potentially make even more. So I know it sounds like we're talking out both sides of our mouth on this. As Pat said, at the end of the day, your comfort level, your peace of mind, how it feels inside to you to have that debt is a really important driving factor. And we often run the numbers for folks both ways and just show them, if you do pay it off, it looks like this, or if you continue on, here's what you could do. And we just kind of coach them through that.